not apologize. And we will now move on to the second fire chat. For that, I'm happy to welcome with me on stage Cordula Schnuer, working at the Times in Luxembourg. Thank you, Cordula, for being here with us. Thank you. Oh, all right. Yeah, let's shift. Let's shift. So here's the microphone. Just need to turn it on.
Hello, hello. There we go. Thank you for having me in today. And you're now, it's a very busy day for you. You're hosting,
Quite.
moderating, and now you find yourself in the hot seat having to answer my questions about yourself. And I always find it a bit boring when other people introduce somebody. I always think it's much more interesting to hear from the person themselves. So maybe to kick us off, can you tell us a bit about how you got into space? We heard just now in the last Fireside chat that when you were 15, you heard something, you saw something. Can you tell us a bit more about what got you started in this journey in space?
Yes, well, I have to say I feel so small in this seat because before this there was Wanda, this incredible astrophysicist. And on my side, for me, it wasn't a kid's dream. I didn't want to become an astronaut as I was a young girl. I actually wanted to become a doctor for a long time and a singer. And then it was when I was 15 years old, I got to kind of an event where we are right now, Asteroid Day. It was in my hometown, Dijon in France. And I met researchers working on the Planck mission, which actually aims at taking this cosmic microwave background. And they showed it to me and had so many questions on the universe. And it got me hooked. So from that moment on, I put the posters in my bedroom next to Justin Bieber, because I was a Bieber fan. And I said, okay, listen, I want to do that in my life. I want to work in space. So at first, I thought I wanted to become an astrophysicist. So I studied physics, but then moved to aerospace engineering, and now a full-time science communicator.
When and how did you become Galactic Chloé?
It's funny because I didn't think I would become it's not someone else. I mean, Galactic Chloé is who I am. But when I was a student, from the first year on, I knocked on the doors of the Swiss Space Center and the EPFL Space Center, and I said, listen, I cannot do much because I don't know much at that point, but I want to help any way I can. And so they said, well, how about doing outreach? So we started organizing events in bars. So the idea was not to bring the people to the science, but bring the science to the people. So we got into bars in Lausanne, where EPFL is, my university, and bringing astrophysicists, astronauts, engineers, talking in a very casual way to people having a beer about science. And so we were a comedy of students, and we all had fun nicknames. And so I was Galactic Chloé, but there was Jupiter Jonas, there was Ellen Boy. At the time, we were still a fan of Elon Musk. And so it wasn't supposed to become a thing. It was just a fun name. And when I started doing science communication on my own, I went to San Francisco to train. And when I got back, we started this YouTube channel with EPFL called the Galactic Chloé Show. And it's really when this persona kind of became public, and that I really became Galactic Chloé.
Galactic Chloé, Jupiter Jonas. It sounds a bit like it might have been a band at some point.
yeah, I would have loved to have this band.
Maybe you'll sing about science one day.
Who knows?
In all of the sort of studies and everything that you have done, you have nonetheless also, learned a tremendous amount about space. What is something that you wish everyone knew about space?
Can I get two?
I'll grant you two.
Okay, two. So what got me into space is really the universe. So seeing that we're part of something so big, different laws that we could never understand. We're trying, but I mean, we also need to accept that there are a lot of things that we'll never get. And one of the things that I still find amazing is when you're during the night and you're walking outside looking at the stars, you're always looking into the past. And actually, even to some kind of, when I'm looking at you, I'm looking into the past, because light has a limit of speed. So it's not infinite. So it means it takes a certain amount of time to go from the star to your eye. The sun, for instance, it takes 8 minutes. So we always see the sun how it was 8 minutes ago. For the moon, it's 1 second. For the stars, it can even be years before. So some of the stars we're looking at in the sky, maybe they don't exist anymore. And I feel this is incredible. It just shows kind of the magic of physics, because when you think as like a human being, past, present, and future, we have this very, we were talking about senses before and how we can sense things. When we talk about past and future, it doesn't seem like it's something we could perceive. And somehow, the physics makes it possible to actually see the past. And so that's something that I find incredible, and I wish everybody would know. And that's also why we actually get to see the cosmic microwave background that I was talking about. It's because we're looking so much further, so much into the past, that we can actually see the beginning of the universe. And that is fascinating. And the second thing, because I say two things, the second thing, but that's more, let's say, on the social and political aspects, I wish everybody knew about the power and the impact of space technologies. Because the universe is fascinating and science is fascinating, but we're also developing a lot of technologies that are very useful for everyday life. Of course, GPS, everybody knows about GPS, but Earth observation for monitoring climate change. I worked a bit in Earth observation. And I feel that sometimes in the media today, we only talk about crewed exploration, space tourism, a few big companies in the USA, but space is much more than this. And I think this is also what the Asteroid Day is about, is featuring what the space sector is all about.
You just mentioned space tourism. Blue Origin recently, and with a lot of media attention, did a female space flight, including, quite notoriously, I think, Katy Perry. Is that type of flight into space something that would interest you? Or is it kind of that division between commercial and scientific endeavor?
Oh, you mean as a person? Like if I were to become a space tourist myself, you mean?
Would it, if somebody came to you and said, hey, Chloé, you have a seat on Blue Origin, would you go?
Interesting question. I think it's always difficult to give a definitive answer because I'm not in the position. If you would ask me 5 years ago, I would have said, yes, let's go. Today, I think that I am much more aware as well of the cost of this type of flights. I'm not financial costs, but as well environmental costs. And I think that we need to put that at the center. So it's not just only what I want, but what is going to be the return for planet Earth if I do go into space. So there would, if I were to go in such a format of like what we call space tourism, or let's say commercial space flight, there would need to be a very concrete return, I think, be it scientific, diplomatic, or inspirational in a sense, but I wouldn't go just for the fun of it.
But these kinds of stints that are happening, and it is called space tourism, what for you does that tell us about sort of the future of space exploration and where we are headed in this new age space race?
So I'm a bit annoyed about how we are focusing a lot of attention around space tourism. And I think it's not for your question, because it's really all the questions that I get all the time when I go on national TV in France or in Switzerland. It all comes down to space tourism, Blue Origin, Elon Musk, are we going to Mars? Trump said this. And 1 month ago, just to give you a bit story, I got so annoyed that I texted a friend and I said, listen, I just heard that 55 countries in Africa got together to form the African Space Agency. It's crazy. No one is talking about it. You know what? Let's go and let's cover the story. So we have a documentary that's going to go on YouTube in less than a month, because we want to shift those narratives. I think to go back to your question about what this tells us about the future of space exploration, is that what do we want the future of space exploration to look like? I don't think that the narrative we're putting forward in media is what we want the future of space exploration to look like. And so I'm really pushing forward so that we change the narratives and maybe focus on other important topics. So being developing countries as well joining space because there is a return for their countries, be it as well space debris, which is a very important issue, as well as what we're talking, the environmental aspects of the space sector that we're also trying to put forward. So I think the narratives that we put forward are as well what's going to shape the future of space exploration.
You just mentioned the environmental aspect. What has learning about and speaking about space taught you about Earth?
I think the more I learn about space, the more I want to remain on Earth. So we're in the first panel. Someone said, space. I think it was, oh, you over there at the top, Kim. You said space wants to kill us. Like it's not. It's not an environment that's made for us. It's not an environment that's made for us, and our planet is just the perfect place. And when I was 15 and I, learned about astronomy, the universe, etc., I actually realized that I maybe one day want to be an astronaut. I wanted to go out there. I actually had an accident where I lost as well my left eye. So I could really much relate to the story beforehand, which kind of killed this dream of me to become a professional astronaut because eyesight is like a number one thing. And I decided to shift my perspective and kind of realize that we're actually all astronauts. I mean, right now we are. It's just our spaceship is so big that we don't realize it. And I mean, if you were to go to space, you would take care of your spaceship, right? Because this is what allows you to stay alive, because space is trying to kill us. So I really shifted my perspective towards I'm already an astronaut and my spaceship is not in a good state. And if we live it this way, well, space is really going to kill us in some way. So now I'm really much towards involved through space sustainability and having space technologies that can have benefits for a spaceship.
How's that also kind of reflected in your work? Because certainly I can attest from a media perspective when we publish things about the environment, about climate change, it's definitely not the most well-read things that we publish. And there seems to be very much, or quite quickly I think you get to a point where people are like, oh, what can I do? And it's such a big problem. Mm-hmm. And how has that impacted the work that you do in your channel, in the science communication that you do? How do you bring kind of the environment into your work?
You know what, from my point of view, it was kind of the other way around. So when I started doing science communication, I was really like, I think it was Galactic Chloé, the passion of space. So she wants to go to space. She's bringing down the marvels of the universe down to Earth. I'm still doing that. But the more I was meeting with the public, doing conferences, shows, being on social media, the more I saw the public was actually asking for, okay, that's really nice, but what is the actual environmental cost of a launch? How about space debris? And what is the usefulness of space when you send like a human on the ISS? What is the return? So it was kind of the other way around. The public also shaped my communication because I realized those were the questions that I was getting. So I wanted to investigate deeper into those aspects. And the more I investigated, the more I realized that the space industry can actually benefit from this dialogue. So not only being kind of in our bubble, like, okay, let's send a human to Mars, that's of course would be cool, but as well listening to the citizens, okay, what do the citizens want? And kind of questioning the practices. And this is how together we can shape what I like to call a desirable future. Because this is how it comes to space. Even though we talk a lot about commercial aspects of space, still relies majoritarily on public funding, public money. So you in the audience, you have the word to say what you want the future of space to look like. So that's what I'm trying to do. I work at the interface between the industry and the public, and so I try to make the dialogue on both ends.
You just mentioned sort of space debris, and not to turn an asteroid into space debris, but we are here for Asteroid Day, and that prospect of having an asteroid hit Earth at some point in the future is maybe a bit scary or daunting. How can we prepare for this kind of event even happening? And what sort of awareness raising can we do?
Welcome to the Asteroid Day. No, I think the Asteroid Day is a great place because I think it's on both. So we need to be aware of the risk, but we need to be aware of the risk. So for instance, there was this asteroid that we talked about this year, YR4, and the risk that it may hit Earth. And so for instance, in the media, it was, okay, there is a very big chance that this asteroid will hit Earth. This is a big issue. And then we're not showing as well what is the process behind it. So how do we evaluate the risk? Oh, the risk today is not the risk tomorrow because we acquire new data that allows us to precise the trajectory and what we think would be an impact probability. And so I think the importance around that topic is not to be scared, because it's been proven we don't react well under fear or negative emotions. What pushes us further is to be more positive and to look at solutions. And the Asteroid Day is about this. It's about raising awareness, understanding the science behind how we detect and kind of look at this asteroid population, and then already developing the tools that may prevent any impact if we do find a high probability of impact one day.
I do want to also speak a bit about this Galactic Chloé persona and being a woman in this field. What has been your response also from girls who see you? Is that something that you set out specifically to do, to maybe try and get, we heard before about, sort of girls and women in science and the days that are associated with that, or is it just something that sort of happened?
Not at first. I think the objective at first was not necessarily this, and one of the reasons is I didn't grow up with parents that I think kind of showed me an unequal world. It was kind of more like inequality is a state of mind. So I kind of evolved, the astrophysicist I was talking about that I met at 15. Now that I think about it, all men. But I mean, I still said, oh, I want to do that. And so I did it. However, the more I was studying and then working at the European Space Agency in the industry, I got a witness that we're in an unequal world and we don't have equal chances and opportunities. So at first, no, when I was doing communication, it was more for everyone. And now, the more I do it, the more I really see that young girls and women kind of identify to me more than men. So being on social media, when I do conferences, I speak to kids between 7 and 8, but also sometimes to 10 to 14. And all of the times, usually, even 10 to 14 is interesting age, because in the room, when I ask for interaction or questions, all the men raise their hands and the girls are very silent. But at the end, all of the girls come to me and ask me questions and follow me on Instagram and then kind of learn more about this topic. So for sure, I think having female and women role models, it's extremely important. First in science, of course, but even I would say on social media, because social media is also where children and the youth consume information, and we know that we don't have the right, like, in equal numbers in men and women in science, and on social media it's even worse. Content creators, mostly male, and scientific content creators, almost 100% men. So I think there is also a need to have more of this type of profiles so that we can have a better representation of diversity in science, and therefore kind of show that this is a cool job, right? I mean, I'm not going to tell you, but science is cool, and we don't show it as cool. So that's what I try to do. I try to, it's accessible to anyone, young girls, young men, and I mean, you can have fun doing it.
Making it accessible, especially when you speak to younger children, because it is cool, but it's also complicated. Science isn't necessarily easy.
Well, nothing is, right?
Understanding the world and how the universe works. Can you give us a bit of insight in how do you break down some of these complicated things into accessible messages?
I think the first step is don't brand it as complicated, because it's not. I mean, it's a question as well of your motivation and what you want to understand. If you're here to talk to me like about French poetry, I'm not the biggest fan. If you go through that, it's going to be complicated for me. Like, all of the jobs are complicated. It's just a question of your motivation to go into it, and therefore brand it as something that is accessible to you. One of the things I'm also fighting very hard against is the fact that when we grow up, we kind of tend to say science is for you or science is not for you. For instance, don't have good grades in math or physics. Science is not for you, especially girls, right? And it's not a question of is it for us or not. Science is for everybody. It's just a few of us will make a career out of it because we want to. But saying to someone science is not for you, it's basically saying you're not supposed to understand how the world works, because this is our toolbox to understand how the world works. So the way I do it is, firstly, it's really a question of branding, question of kind of demystifying this image of the scientist, be it gender, be it the fact that it's complicated, that it's not accessible, and then trying to link it more to everyday life topics. That's my 2 ingredients.
Sort of demystifying the scientist, to what extent is that also a part of universities, research institutions, and we talk about them as ivory towers, but the people who work in these sciences to maybe break down some of these walls. This is obviously, you have made your career out of this, but the people who are in the sciences, what advice would you maybe give them on how they can make their work more accessible?
That's a good question. I think it's just to show the human part of the science. So we were talking about the YouTube channel that we launched together with EPFL that kind of kicked off this Galactic Chloé brand. And basically what we were doing is do interviews with professors, with researchers, with even students or members of the administration. And we were talking about what they were doing, the science, but we were talking about who they are. So, there's this big scientist that actually built up the application that's supposed to track COVID in Switzerland, is all over the news, talk about what is a pandemic and how, this app is not supposed to steal your data, etc. But then on the show, you can learn, I love to do pizza with my children. Every Sunday eats pizza. And is doing all of the bread himself, like for 8 hours. And so this way you kind of relate, because we're all humans in the end. I mean, some of us have a family, some of us don't, but like now I'm a young mother. So now I know that if I talk to my audience also in that frame, then you relate to some level, if it's not the scientific one. So I think we kind of need to break down those walls of there's the professional aspects and the personal aspects, and kind of sometimes allow them to mix so we can relate to the people around us.
As a young mother, do you think that, that generation will live on the moon or travel to Mars?
So you mean my kid? Well, I think even my generation will see a woman on the moon, for sure. To Mars, I'm not so sure. We have a lot of technologies that are now ready to go to Mars. I would be extremely surprised if I ever see a human on Mars. I think if we were to see someone on Mars, would be through a commercial company, a private company. And I'm not sure it would be a 2-way ticket. I think we will just see someone that goes there and dies there, which is, of course, not something that is possible for a public organization to do.
How do you feel about that kind of commercialization of that domain, and having private players becoming involved and eventually maybe doing something like sending someone on a 1-way mission to Mars?
So, the private sector was always involved in space. Because organizations like the European Space Agency or NASA, sometimes we see, this is Hera, for instance, Hera we were talking about this morning, this is an ESA mission. But it's not ESA who's doing the stuff, right? I mean, they're managing the project, they're funding it, but then it's companies that win a bid to do this part of the satellite or this part of the satellite, or assembling together. So there were always an industry behind the space sector. What is changing now is that we're trying to foster a more self-sustained economy. So for instance, before, if you wanted to launch something into space, you had to buy a rocket. So it's like tomorrow you want to go to Switzerland and say, okay, buy the train to go there. So you buy everything to put the train together, and then you go. Now it's changing, because there's kind of this shift where you can only buy the tickets to go to space, which is what SpaceX did, which is a big revolution, and that is good. I mean, that is good because the price go down, and we don't have to waste public money in huge building rockets every time, and we can invest it someplace else. So in that sense, it is very positive. I think then what's missing is that we have these public-private partnerships that we need to shape around and see where the limit is. For instance, mining asteroids. Do we want, as humanity, being able to mine those asteroids? If we do, who does these resources belong to? So it says, I don't see the commercial aspect as something bad, as something good. I see it as something positive that we have the opportunity to shape in the most desirable way for the future.
Is there a specific mission, research project, whether it's NASA, ESA, or somebody else carrying it out, that you kind of have your eye on, that you're particularly excited about and want to see the outcome of?
Well, there's a particular mission, but that's like not going to happen the next year. It's ELISA. We're supposed to detect gravitational waves in space, because so far we've been able to detect them on planet Earth. And I actually saw one part of the mission, because in Switzerland we're doing all of the metrology for the lasers, because there's going to be basically 3 satellites in form of a triangle. Lasers have very stable lasers, because you need to detect very, very little disturbance. And I think this is going to open the door to so many things we don't understand yet about the universe. So I'm really looking forward to this mission.
And then maybe just as a final question, more generally, what would be kind of your hope for the future of space exploration and what we achieve in space as humans?
My hope is that we don't make the same mistakes we've done in the past decades on Earth. It's that we learn to work together to build a future that is desirable for our populations. The will is that we have truly more of a dialogue, as I was saying, between the space sector and all of us little astronauts on planet Earth, so that it actually represents the needs and the will of what we want to do out there.
Thank you so much, Chloé.
Well,
the audience will be hearing more from you as the day progresses.
Yes, well, it was really a pleasure to exchange with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's time for a little break now.
Actually, we have a panel.
There is a panel.
Yeah.
We skipped the break.
Thank you.